All right, ready to go with your cross?
Yes.
All right, we're back on the case of the state against state, and the appearances are as before. And ready for the jury?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yeah.
State's ready.
Oh, yes, ask Mr. Cooks to come back in. Judge Wagner, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to awaken you. I was calling my jury. I'm sorry.
Oh, you didn't want me.
Have a nice day.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Right. We would allow her to be on the jury, Judge, if you wanted.
I think I didn't press that button. Would you come down, please?
Yep.
Thank you.
Samantha Whitaker is very good. Save the water for give him a cup of water. No, he can drink it. Just me with beverages. Yeah.
Good afternoon, folks. Mr. Johnson, you may cross-examine.
Thank you. Mr. Cook, throughout this case, you've talked with a number of different police officers, right?
Yes, sir.
You've had meetings with police officers on numerous different occasions, right?
Yes, sir.
So on August 3rd, you met with your mother, your stepmother, and two officers from the Mount Pleasant Police Department, right?
Yes, sir.
And then immediately following that, you met alone with those same two Mount Pleasant police officers.
Yes, sir.
The following day, on August 4th, you met with Detective Duffy, correct?
That's correct.
And then also at some point during that interview, Detective Dietz joined you as well, right?
That's correct.
On September 22nd, you had another meeting about this case, right?
When was that?
September 22nd. And I can maybe describe for you who was there, and would that help jog your memory, you think?
Yes, sir.
At the meeting on September 22nd was your attorney, Attorney Gravely, Attorney Kruzarek, Detective Dietz, and Detective Duffy. Do you remember that meeting?
I do.
Then in November, on November 28th of 2017, you went on a car ride with Detective Duffy and Detective Dietz. Remember that?
Yes, sir.
So you've met with police officers or attorneys on a number of different occasions, right?
Yes, sir.
So on August 3rd, you saw Daniel Tate get taken into custody, right?
That's correct.
You did not.
I did.
You did not get taken into custody at the same time that Daniel Tate did.
I did not get taken into custody.
A couple of hours later, you went down to the police department with your mother and your stepmother.
That's correct.
And that's when you spoke with the officers from Mount Pleasant, right?
That's correct.
You informed the officers from Mount Pleasant that you had a new cell phone, or it was new to you, right?
That's correct.
The phone number that you had prior to July 24th, you did not know where that phone was, right?
That's correct.
And therefore, you didn't have that phone to turn over to the police.
That's correct.
Mr. Gravely asked you some questions about lies that you told to the police during your interviews, correct?
That's correct.
When you met with the officers from Mount Pleasant on August 3rd, you lied to them and said that Olivia never showed up, right?
That's correct.
But instead that you had gone to your girlfriend's house.
That is correct.
The detectives from Mount Pleasant told you a number of different times, make sure you tell the truth, right?
That is correct.
And you testified also that your mother had told you, tell the truth, right?
That is correct.
But you didn't.
That is correct.
You also testified that part of the reason that you lied was because that you and Danny had talked about, well, if we get caught, here's what we're supposed to say, right?
That is correct.
During the interviews that you had with police on August 3rd, August 4th, you never said anything about this interaction with Danny, about coming up with this story, right?
I did.
You did tell them
I
about
did.
that? Which interview was that?
I don't remember specifically, but I know that I told him that's why I lied.
What did you tell them about why you lied?
That me and Danny had met previously in the day, that he had told me that he was that his grandma said that the police were looking for him at her house, and I told him that me and him had met at Columbus Park and made an agreement to lie.
But you're not sure if you told that to the Mount Pleasant officers or you told it to the officers from Kenosha?
I don't remember which officers I told it to, no.
The interviews that you did on August 3rd and August 4th were in rooms at the police department, right?
That's correct.
And those were recorded, correct?
Correct.
Well, objection. How would he know if they were recorded?
Well, did anyone inform you that it was being recorded?
Not at the time, but I found out afterwards it was recorded. I have a recording of one interview.
I'm going to object, counsel. I think it's mischaracterizing what we know to be the fact, which is that not all interviews were recorded, right?
Well, I think if he's aware if it was recorded, he can answer.
I think it's for your redirect.
And your testimony is now that you did tell officers on either August 3rd or August 4th that this conversation occurred between you and Daniel Tate at Columbus Park.
Yes, I do remember telling the officers that.
Now, you also indicated that it was that conversation that caused you to lie to the police officers, right?
What do you mean?
That it was a conversation between you and Daniel Tate about this story that you were going to make up, and that's what caused you to initially, I guess, to lie to the police officers, right?
Yes, sir.
But even after the officers tell you, well, Danny's down by the lake and he's talking to the officers and showing them what happened, you continue to lie, right?
That is correct.
But it was your belief that Danny was down at the beach talking to them. He was telling them the whole story, right?
That's correct.
But even then, believing that he was telling them the whole story, you continue to provide false information.
That is correct.
And you had told the officers that you were never down by the lake, right?
Yes, sir.
And you repeated that to the officers a couple of times, right?
Yes, sir.
You also indicated to the officers that you never touched Olivia McKay, right?
That is correct.
And that, again, was not true.
That is correct.
During your direct examination, you indicated that you're not sure who popped the trunk of the vehicle.
That's correct.
However, you told the Mount Pleasant officers on August 3rd that you were the one who popped the trunk for Daniel Tate, right?
I assume so, yes.
The officers continued to question you about whether you were down by the beach, right?
That's correct.
And you continued to say, I wasn't there, right?
Yes, sir.
And then even after you had said that you were at the beach, you continued to tell the officers, but I didn't go out to Mount Pleasant, right?
That's correct.
And that, again, was not true.
That is true, or that is correct.
When you talked to officers or detectives on August 3rd and August 4th, you did not tell them that Daniel Tate had thrown Olivia McKay's phone out of the car on Green Bay Road, correct?
On what day? I apologize.
When he met with officers on August 3rd and August 4th. You did not tell any of those detectives that Daniel Tate had thrown Olivia McKay's phone out of the car on Green Bay Road.
I don't remember.
If there was a recording of that conversation, that would be the most accurate version of what was said, right?
That's correct.
During your interview on August 4th of 2017 with Detective Duffy and Detective Dietz, you signed a written statement, right?
I don't remember.
Would it, I'm going to have this marked. what's been marked as Defense Exhibit 52. First, can you tell me how many pages is that?
3.
And what is that document?
A statement.
Whose statement? It's your written statement from August 4th of 2017, right?
This.
At any point in that written statement, do you say that Daniel Tate threw Olivia McKay's phone out of the car on Green Bay Road?
Objection, Judge. It's not an inconsistent statement if he wasn't asked. If he's not asked by officers, it's nothing inconsistent.
Well, I think it's impeachment by omission.
You can ask him directly, but whether it appears in there, it is in fact you're attempting to impeach him with a statement that is not inconsistent. That is, it is not included apparently, but it's not inconsistent. So you can ask directly, but and you can get exactly the same place without asking that particular question. So the objection is sustained.
Well, I guess I'm gonna go back in time just a little bit. Mr. Cook, you indicated that you did tell officers on August 3rd or August 4th about this conversation that you and Daniel Tate had in Columbus Park, right?
Yes, sir.
And on August 4th, you completed a written statement with Detective Duffy and Detective Dietz, right?
That's correct.
And they were indicating to you to make sure that you told them everything that you knew, right?
That's correct.
Did you indicate or did you put into your written statement that you and Daniel Tate had this discussion in Columbus Park?
Objection. He's already indicated he said it. If he's not asked the question by Detective Duffy and Dietz, but is instead asked by Mount Pleasant police officers, it's not an inconsistent statement.
Well, it's not inconsistent, but that's not the direct question that he asked. The objection's overruled.
So is that information included in your statement?
In which statement?
In the one that's sitting before you?
It is not.
And again, when you met with officers, they were telling you, don't leave anything out, right?
That's correct.
Now, when you met with Detective Duffy, actually, I'm going to take that statement from him right now.
Was it marked?
It was. When you met with Detective Duffy on August 4th, you indicated that you were about 5 to 10 feet away from Daniel Tate and Olivia McKay on the beach, correct?
That's correct.
And now today you're saying, no, I remember that it was actually further than that, right?
That's correct.
When you met with the officers on August 4th, that was approximately 10 days after this had occurred?
Approximately, yes.
And as you testify here today, we're about 11 months after this occurred, right?
That's correct.
You also testified here today that you saw Mr. Tate pick up some type of piece of cloth and use that to choke Olivia McKay, right?
Yes, sir.
In your interview with Detective Duffy and Detective Dietz, you didn't mention that information until about 2 hours into the interview. Is that correct?
Objection. Again, it's not an inconsistent statement to.
You can address it on your redirect and then finalize it. The objections are all.
Would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, sir.
The information about Daniel Tate choking Olivia McKay with some type of piece of cloth, you did not mention that to the detectives on August 4th until about 2 hours into your interview. Is that correct?
I am not sure.
Would you agree that you added that information later after you told them about using a sleeper hold and putting Olivia McKay in the water?
I don't remember exactly how the interview went.
You testified today that Daniel Tate, after you say that he killed Olivia McKay, that he took her vehicle and backed it up onto the grass, correct?
He drove it onto the grass, yes.
You did not tell that to officers on August 3rd or August 4th, correct?
I don't recall.
You said here today that on the way back from Mount Pleasant that Daniel Tate stopped the vehicle on Washington Road, correct?
That's correct.
And threw property out of that vehicle.
That's correct.
On August 4th, when you talked with Detective Duffy and Detective Dietz, you said to them, quote, "We didn't stop on Washington Road." Correct?
I don't have the statement. I don't know.
Which of them? Page 14. Got it. Thank you.
Your Honor, would the court like a copy?
Yes, please, if you have one.
Mr. Cook, I'm going to show you what's marked as Exhibit, which is a 30-page document, a transcript of your conversation with Detective Duffy and Detective Dietz on August 4th. And I'm going to draw your attention to page 14, line 11 and 12. And can you indicate to me, it has your name, right? It says Jamari Cook, and then has some words after that. What are those words?
We didn't stop on Washington.
Have that back. So you told the officers we didn't stop on Washington Road, right?
That's correct.
But today you're saying we did.
Yes, sir.
Now, when you returned to Kenosha from Mount Pleasant, you had the vehicle, right?
That's correct.
Today you testified that on July 24th you went to Wheaton Franciscan Hospital in the car, right?
That's correct.
After you left the hospital, that you went to the Knights Inn, right?
That's correct.
You did not tell that to detectives on August 3rd or August 4th, correct?
That's correct.
You didn't tell the detectives that you had taken rubber gloves from Wheaton Franciscan Hospital with you, right?
That's correct.
And you also did not tell the detectives on August 3rd or August 4th that you had thrown away a pair of shoes from Olivia McKay's car, right?
That's correct.
And you testified here today about what you did with Olivia McKay's vehicle after leaving Racine on July 24th, right?
That's correct.
When you met with Detective Duffy on August 4th, you said you didn't know what had happened to Olivia's car, correct?
That's correct.
When you testified on direct today, you said that while you were in the vehicle coming back from Racine, that Daniel Tate indicated that you needed to go down by the band shell so he can meet someone who owed him money, right?
That's correct.
You did not tell that to the officers on August 3rd or August 4th, right?
That's correct.
You also testified today that you talked about garbage bags and that Mr. Tate had garbage bags with him, right?
That's correct.
It was not uncommon for you or Daniel Tate to have garbage bags with you because the two of you were moving around a lot, right?
That's correct.
Garbage bags could also help to keep your property from getting wet.
That's correct.
You testified today that Daniel Tate, once you got to Mount Pleasant, pulled out blue surgical gloves, correct?
That's correct.
You did not say that to officers when you met with them on August 3rd or August 4th, correct?
That's correct.
Now, at some point during the course of this case, were you made aware that your fingerprint was on one of the garbage bags?
I found out about a month ago, yeah.
So you found out that your fingerprints were on the bag, but Daniel Tate's were not, correct?
That's correct.
You also testified about this term, grip a steamer, right?
That's correct.
And I believe that you said that that means to obtain a stolen vehicle, right?
That is correct.
It doesn't mean kill someone to get a stolen vehicle.
No, it does not.
You also indicated that Mr. Tate and you had been talking for weeks about stealing a car. You hadn't been talking about killing someone and taking a car, right?
That's correct.
Do you know someone named Anthony Kimmons?
I do.
And he is someone who was also an inmate in Kenosha County?
That's correct.
And were you in the same day room with him during the January of 2018?
Yes, we were.
And while you were housed with Mr. Kimmons, did you indicate or state to him that you had killed someone?
No, I did not.
Did you state to him that you were blaming Daniel because you did not want to go to prison?
No, I did not.
Now, you've already said that you and Daniel, you guys were very close, right?
That's correct.
And you spent a lot of time with each other, right?
That's correct.
And during periods of time, the two of you were essentially homeless at certain points, right?
That's correct.
And it sounds like the two of you would kind of, I guess, sort of pool your resources. You'd help each other out, right?
That's correct.
And so you guys shared a lot of different things, right?
That's correct.
And the two of you were able to use each other's phones, right?
That's correct.
You also, because you had used each other's phones, you also had access to Mr. Tate's Facebook account, correct?
That's correct.
And there were times that you would send messages under his username.
I don't recall that.
Do you know who Suzanne Bugdala is?
I do.
And do you know what her Facebook username is?
Susie B.
How about Susie Nicole?
I don't recall that name.
Do you know who Susie Nicole is?
No, I do not.
And you testified before about what Daniel Tate's username is, and it's DG Youngin, correct?
That's correct.
On July 22nd of 2017, at under UTC time would be 20:53:55. Did you send a message to Susie Nicole from Daniel Tate's Facebook account?
I don't remember.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
I don't know.
Do you have this? Just want to direct us to where you're looking.
Two trees on the top.
3, 5.
Wait, are you pointing me to what? Were you pointing me to a specific
Oh,
place
I'm sorry.
where he says J?
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Cook, I'm going to show you what's been marked as Defense Exhibit 54, which is a Facebook business record. And it's a conversation between D.G. Youngin, who is whom?
Daniel Tate.
And then someone named Susie Nicole, and you said you're not totally sure who that is, right?
That's correct.
But it's page 3585 of the Facebook business record. And I'm going to direct your attention to the bottom portion of it. I'll point that out to you. But there's a statement from D.G. Youngin, correct?
Correct.
Maybe here, actually, I'm going to put it on the display. But a message from D.G. Youngin on July 22nd, 2017 at 20:53:55 UTC time. And it says, no, he's been slumped. And then it's a dash and it says J, correct?
Correct.
You also are known as J sometimes, right?
That's correct.
And that's a message that you sent, correct?
Correct.
And it's a message that you sent from Daniel Tate's Facebook account, right?
I don't recall sending this message, but yes, it's from Daniel's account.
But you agree that it's a message that you sent, though, right?
I assume so. It says my name.
And sort of the context of the conversation is talking about being sick, but then no, he's been slumped. What does that mean?
He's been asleep.
So you're saying Mr. Tate's asleep, and so you're responding through his Facebook
That's
profile,
correct.
right?
That's correct.
Now, you testified that when you saw Daniel Tate choking Olivia McKay, that you didn't do anything, right?
That's correct.
Now, you testified later that around August 3rd and August 4th, you were trying to do things to help Daniel Tate stay out of trouble, right?
That's correct.
But when you saw him, or you're saying that you saw him strangling Olivia McKay, you didn't intervene at that time to try and stop him from committing a crime and to keep himself out of trouble, right?
I did not.
When you talked to Detective Duffy on August 4th of 2017, you told him that after you saw Daniel Tate put Olivia McKay in a sleeper hold that you looked away, correct?
Correct.
You indicated to Detective Duffy that you did that because you didn't want to watch anyone die, correct?
Correct.
You didn't think, though, that maybe if you intervened and stopped what you are saying you saw, that if you'd intervened, that maybe you could have prevented someone from dying?
I do think about it, yes.
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing
I
you.
do think about it, yes.
But at the time that you're saying you saw Daniel Tate do this, you did not think about, I could stop this from happening.
No, I did not.
You also indicated to Detective Duffy that you thought that if Olivia McKay got up, then you'd both go to jail, correct?
Okay.
Again, Judge, I'm going to object. So these are not inconsistent statements. So counsel's reading from an interview, but this is only admissible evidence if it's inconsistent.
No, it's cross-examination, and it's not impeaching if it's not inconsistent. It's still acceptable evidence.
So he's allowed to read the quote? I just want to be sure I understand. I understand he can ask, did you say this? Did what, you know, he can ask the question, and if he gets a different answer, then he could read the quote. But I don't think he can just simply read the quote.
I didn't say that it was a quote. I wasn't actually even looking at the transcript. But
The objection is overruled.
So, again, so you thought if she got up, you'd both go to jail, correct?
No.
That's what you told the officers on August 4th, 2017, was you thought that if she got up, you'd both go to jail.
That's not what I meant.
Okay, that may not be what you meant, but is that what you said?
Yes.
So you didn't intervene to try and help Miss McKay because you were concerned she may be a witness against you later on?
No.
No, that's not true, or no?
That's not why.
But you were better off letting her die than being able to say what had actually happened, right?
I don't understand the question.
Well, if Miss McKay is dead, then she can't tell anyone about what actually happened on that beach, right?
That's correct.
As you indicated previously, you're hoping that by testifying against Daniel Tate that you're going to be able to help yourself, right?
That's correct.
So the more helpful you are to the state, your hope is that gets you a bigger benefit at the end, right?
That's correct.
So you want to help the state to save yourself, right?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, I don't have any further questions, but I would move exhibits, I believe it's 52, 53, and 54 into evidence.
Is there objection?
I'm not sure what they are.
Uh,
So transcript, Facebook conversation,
and the written statement. I have them right here.
Objection, they were moved into evidence.
Received. Mr. Gravely?
Mr. Cook, I'm going to again show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 54. This is the Facebook communication with somebody named Susie Nicole. And I'm going to ask you again to take a quick look at the no, he's been slumped J. So I'm going to put my fingers right there. Do you see where I'm pointing to?
I do.
Okay. Does it appear that first of all, is July 22nd the same day that the defendant went to the emergency room for his tonsillitis?
I don't know the exact date.
Does that sound like the right date?
Yes.
And when he went to the emergency room for his tonsillitis, who went with him?
He went in the ambulance, and me and Daryl walked there.
You and who?
Daryl.
You and Daryl walked there?
Yes, correct.
And what hospital did he go to?
The downtown hospital emergency room.
Okay. And did you stay with him there?
I did.
And did you stay with him there out of friendship?
I did.
And then when he was discharged, were you there up until the moment he was discharged?
I was.
And then where did you go with him, or did you separate from him at that time?
I don't remember.
Did you spend the night with him at his grandma's house?
I did.
So, and do you remember about what time he got out of the hospital?
In the afternoon.
Afternoon? Okay, so if this is the same day, July 22nd, then would this be an individual then who might be asking the defendant whether he's okay?
Yes.
And at some points after he got home, was he sleeping or napping?
He was.
And if this is a person you know, would you have possibly answered his phone and said he's sleeping right now?
Yeah.
So, do you believe you did that, or do you just have no memory one way or another?
It's possible, but I don't remember her name being Suzanne Nicole on Facebook.
Okay. And in this particular communication, the counsel has presented to you, it says, no, he's been slumped, which means he's sleeping.
Correct.
Yes?
Correct.
And then it says dash J. What does that mean to you?
That it's me sending the message.
Do you believe it's appropriate etiquette to always identify yourself if you're answering under someone else's name?
Yes.
And have you ever utilized D.G. Youngin without identifying yourself as J?
No, I have not.
Is that what you did here?
Yes, I did.
Now, I want to be clear on the meetings you had with officers on August 3rd and August 4th. On August 3rd, when you first met with officers, where did you meet with them?
In a side, office room.
Okay. And do you have any knowledge one way or another whether that interview, those discussions in that room were recorded?
I do not.
Okay. Now, you've had an opportunity to see some transcripts of other interviews, correct?
That's correct.
And some of those occurred on the 3rd and the 4th. Is that right?
That's correct.
But you are aware you have not looked at recordings, or you're not aware of transcripts of all the times you spoke to police on the 3rd and the 4th. Isn't that right?
That's correct.
So you were asked by counsel whether you ever told the officers about the circumstances of your old phone being thrown out on August 3rd or August 4th. Do you remember being asked that by the defense counsel?
Your Honor, I think that mischaracterizes what the question was. It was whether he'd gotten a new phone in between July 24th and August 3rd.
I'm characterizing the question as I remember it, Judge. Certainly they can refer to their own notes.
Jurors can decide for themselves what was previously stated. Go ahead.
So my memory of the question, and you disagree with me if you want, is that you were asked the question by defense counsel that whether you ever told the officers on August 3rd or 4th that you had gotten a new phone because your phone had been thrown out under some circumstances?
I did tell them that, yes.
Okay. And let me ask you, do you recall ever being asked on August 3rd or 4th about the specific circumstances of your phone?
I do not.
And if you weren't asked, was it something that would have occurred to you to talk about?
No.
Now, you were asked whether it was only after 2 hours that you brought up that Olivia had some kind of clothing put around her neck by the defendant. Do you remember the counsel asking you that?
I do.
Was the clothing put around her neck at the end of the things that happened that caused Olivia's death or were around Olivia's death on the beach that night?
It was.
It wasn't one of the beginning things, was it?
No, it was not.
So it happened. So when you talked about it, it was one of the later things that happened?
That's correct.
You were asked by defense counsel whether you ever told officers on the 3rd or the 4th of August that you went to the hospital in Racine on the next day, on July 24th. Do you remember being asked that question?
I do.
Do you remember ever being asked by officers on August 3rd or 4th the question of whether you went to the hospital?
I do not.
And if they had not asked you that, would you have thought to answer that or give that information?
I would not.
You remember being asked by defense counsel whether on July 24th, whether you told officers on August 3rd or 4th that on July 24th you went over to the Knights Inn. Do you remember being asked that by defense counsel?
I do.
Do you remember ever being asked by officers on the 3rd or the 4th about whether you ever went to the Knights Inn?
I do not.
And if they didn't ask you, would that have ever been something you would have thought to tell them?
No.
Do you remember being asked by defense counsel whether you ever told the officers on August 3rd or 4th about rubber gloves and that the defendant wore them? Do you remember being asked that?
I do.
And do you remember ever being asked about rubber gloves by officers on the 3rd or the 4th?
I do not.
And so you don't remember ever being asked that information?
I do not.
Who do you remember asking you about that information for finally?
You.
And when I asked that question, did you immediately give me an answer about whether there were gloves?
I did. I did.
Do you remember being asked by defense counsel whether on the 3rd or the 4th of August when officers were talking to you, did you ever tell them that at the Knights Inn in the trash can that you threw out shoes or other items from the car? Do you remember being asked that by defense counsel today?
I do remember.
And do you remember the officers ever asking you on the 3rd or the 4th about any items you threw away in a trash can?
I do not.
Excuse me?
I do not.
And was that something you thought to mention to them at that time?
I did not.
Who's the first person who asked you whether you remembered anything about any items going into a trash can at the Knights Inn?
You.
And when I asked you that question, were you able to answer me?
I was.
Now, you were asked by defense counsel today whether you had ever mentioned the story that the defendant told you and Olivia that he was owed some money, so we need to go back to the band shell. Do you remember him asking that question today?
That's correct.
And he asked, yes?
Yes.
And did he ask you whether you ever brought that up to officers on the 3rd or the 4th?
He did.
Okay. Do you remember the officers ever asking you about what caused you to specifically go back to the band shell that day?
I do not.
Who's the first person who asked you what specifically was the reason you headed back to a band shell you'd been at earlier with Olivia and the defendant?
You.
And when I asked you that question, did you tell me an answer to that?
I did.
Now, defense counsel asked you whether it was uncommon to have garbage bags in your possession on the days that you were not in a stable residence. Do you remember being asked that question?
I do.
And what about on the days where you knew where you were going to be sleeping and you were out on a date and were going to return to where you were sleeping? Would it be a common idea to bring garbage bags on a date when you knew you were coming back to the same place?
No.
What about surgical gloves?
No.
Now, you were asked about whether, when you first found out your fingerprints were on one of the bags, that were used to bag the body of Olivia McKay? Do you remember being asked that today?
I do.
Did you know where your fingerprints were going to be found when you told officers on August 3rd and 4th that you had bagged the lower part of Olivia McKay's body?
I did not.
You didn't have any idea your fingerprints were on there?
No.
But you still told them that information on the 3rd and the 4th?
That's correct.
Who is this Anthony Kimmons to you?
Somebody who's in the same jail as me?
Is he a friend of yours?
No.
Is he the opposite of a friend of yours?
We don't get along.
You don't get along? Was that clear when you were with him?
Yes.
Would you have any reason to tell somebody who you didn't get along with about your case?
No.
Now, Jamari, you were shown a statement, and you said it was three.
Mr. Cook.
I'm sorry, apologize. Mr. Cook, you were shown a statement, and it's Exhibit 52, and it was a 3-page statement. Is that correct?
It is correct.
If I'm correct, the 3rd page is not full, is it?
No, it's not.
So when I show the 3rd page here, I'm not going to show the contents, but the 3rd page, that's accurate. It's got a lot of space left on the 3rd page.
That's correct.
And you've testified today now for multiple hours about this incident, haven't you?
I have.
Did you believe that 2.5 pages is enough that you were able to include every single detail about what happened in this case?
No, sir.
It's a summary, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Does it have everything you know about this case?
No.
Does it have the answers to some of the things you were specifically asked by the officers?
No, it does not.
I have no further questions, Judge.
Defense?
I have some, thank you. Mr. Cook, I'm going to show you, this is again Defense Exhibit 54. These are the text messages, or sorry, not text messages, but Facebook business records. It's page 3585. And this is, again, the message where it indicates under DG Youngin's username, says, no, he's been slumped -J, correct?
Correct.
And then the user, Susie Nicole, says, your phone in my car, correct?
Correct.
And then DG Youngin responds, is Daryl Hatt in there?
Correct.
Now that's you, though, who wrote that, correct?
Correct.
It doesn't say J after that statement, though, right?
No, it does not.
Turning to page 3586, looks like there's a response from Susie Nicole that's between 3585 and 3586, but her response is yeah. And then another statement from DG Youngin, when you come in this way, that again is also you, correct?
Correct.
Susie Nicole says Monday, and then under DG Youngin it says all right, and again that's you again, correct?
No. I don't know. It could be.
The other ones though are you indicated,
That's,
right?
Yes, it was.
Mr. Gravely asked you some questions on redirect about a phone, and I just want to kind of clarify. When you talked with officers on August 3rd and August 4th, you did not tell them that you saw Daniel Tate throw Olivia McKay's phone out of her vehicle on Green Bay Road, correct?
That's correct.
You were asked about a number of pieces of information that you had not stated to the detectives on August 3rd and August 4th. While you were meeting with the detectives, they were telling you, make sure you tell the truth, right?
Correct.
They were also telling you, don't hold anything back, right?
Correct.
While you were meeting with them, there wasn't any type of time limit that you could talk with them, right?
That's correct.
And you stated that you were not asked about the blue surgical gloves by detectives, but that you discussed that with Attorney Gravely at some point, right?
Correct.
When was that?
A couple months ago.
Attorney Gravely is the prosecutor in Kenosha County, right?
That's correct.
And he has a lot of power over you right now, right?
Correct.
So you want to make sure, you want to try and keep him happy, right?
Objection. I think this is outside the scope of my cross.
It is, but I have a pretty permissive attitude about this, so objections are ruled.
So you want to keep Attorney Gravely happy, right?
Correct.
And the first time that you said anything about going back to Daniel saying why you needed to go back to the band shell to get some money, the first person you told that to was Attorney Gravely, right?
Correct.
You were also asked about taking garbage bags. Now, on the night of July 23rd, you left Kaylee's house because you had gotten into an argument with, was it her stepfather, you said?
That's correct.
So when you left, you didn't necessarily know if you're going to be able to return there, right?
Objection. Again, outside the scope of my cross. Didn't ask him a single question about his whereabouts
Overruled.
or my redirect.
Those are all of my questions.
Sure. Perfect.
So, counsel asked you on recross whether you had mentioned on August 3rd or 4th that you had seen the defendant throw Olivia's phone on Green Bay Road. Do you recall him asking that question today?
I do.
Were you asked that question, to your knowledge, on August 3rd or 4th?
No.
And based on that not being asked that question, did you think to include it in your discussion of the case?
No.
I'm going to again show you marked as Exhibit 54. Turn your attention again to that same line. If I understand correctly, you communicated, no, he's been slumped, Jay, correct?
Correct.
So you've identified yourself as Jay, is that true?
Yes.
And you're indicating the person who is the usual owner of this phone is sleeping, is that right?
That's correct.
Would you have thought that you would need to identify yourself as Jay in each of the extra responses you make when you've just told the person that Jay is that the defendant is sleeping?
No.
Okay. Nothing else.
Defense?
So, Mr. Cook, it's your testimony that you were never asked about what happened to Olivia McKay's phone, right?
Correct.
Thank you.
Your phone, and he's saying he was not.
In a way he would answer it? All right. I want to approach it.
Your Honor, I think it's
Let's take a break. Please don't talk about the case during the break. Start again about 25 after.